think we'll get started. Hello, everyone, and welcome to California ReLeaf's informational webinar about our Growing Green Community Small Grant Program, which is generously sponsored by Pacific Gas and Electric Company. And we couldn't provide our small grant program without the support that we received from the USDA Forest Service as well as CAL FIRE. I just want to say hello. My name is Megan Duquette. I'm California ReLeaf's Education and Communications Program Manager, and I'm on the call today with Victoria Vasquez. Do you want to say hi, Victoria?
I will. Hello. Hello, everyone. Grants and Public Policy Manager Victoria Vasquez here. Nice to see you all today.
Wonderful. So as we get started, I want to go over a few housekeeping items with you all today. And the first thing is that we will be recording today's webinar, and we're going to be making it available on our website as well as emailing it to all of the registrants that signed up for our program today. And we will also be hosting a Q&A session at the very end. You can ask questions today by using the chat feature at the bottom of your Zoom toolbar, and you can put your questions as we go, or you can wait till the end, and that's fine too. There is a button at the bottom of your Zoom toolbar that allows you to raise your hand. It's either on the Zoom bar directly, or you can hit the react button and the hand should be there. And you can put that up and we will call on you and you can ask them verbally as well. Victoria, would you mind advancing the slides to the third slide there about today's agenda? So we're going to go over a little bit about California ReLeaf. We're going to talk about our grant program, overview it, as well as eligibility of encouraged activities. We're going to go over key dates, how we do grant payments, resources to help you as you apply to the grant, and then we're going to have that Q&A period at the end. And then, Victoria, could you advance to one slide? Great. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about California ReLeaf. For those of you that may be unfamiliar with California ReLeaf, we are a statewide nonprofit dedicated to supporting grassroots efforts and building strategic partnerships that protect, enhance, and grow California's urban and community forests. And we have four main program areas that help us fulfill our mission. The first of which is education. We provide and host educational programs throughout the year, such as webinars, and we also host our wonderful retreat, network retreat in the spring, which is also a great opportunity. We share research and resources via our e-newsletter as well as our social media channel. So if you haven't already joined our e-newsletter, we highly recommend that you do that to stay up to date about events and programs and grants that are available for California and across the country. We also do advocacy at the state level. We speak for trees in state legislation and policy and provide resources for community groups to speak for trees locally. And we have a really great resource page on our website that I highly recommend you check out. We provide grants, and you're all here today to learn about one of our grants, our Growing Green Communities Grant Program. And we also have another small grant program open for Southern California called the California Arbor Week program that is generously sponsored by Edison International. And we'll be hosting a webinar about that tomorrow. So if you have colleagues or friends in Southern California, be sure to let them know about that program. And then sometime in early 2025, we will also be announcing another grant program we're going to be offering. California ReLeaf was awarded funds through the Inflation Reduction Act through CAL FIRE and the USDA Forest Service. And so we'll be releasing more information about that program, the California Canopy Equity Program, sometime in 2025. So be sure to join our e-newsletter to stay updated. And then the last thing is we are the umbrella organization of the ReLeaf Network. And our network, we convene over 85 urban forest and urban greening community-based organizations across the state, all the way up north from Eureka, all the way south to San Diego. And we convene them to share best practices, do peer-to-peer learning. And I'm just really excited to share more about the ReLeaf Network with you. And I hope you'll go and check out the ReLeaf Network on our website and learn about membership. If you aren't a network member organization, we'd love for you to join. We've got incredible benefits including access to our network tree inventory program, which allows network members a free account to Planet Geo's tree plotter inventory software. So check that out. We'd love to share more about that. And in the chat, I'll put some of the links to what I've been talking about. And then, oops, we went ahead, but that's okay. The first thing I wanted to chat with you about is our partnership with Pacific Gas and Electric. So we've been hosting the Growing Green Communities grant program since 2017, and Pacific Gas and Electric Company has generously funded over $200,000 of money and grants through this program, and it's just been an incredible partnership. And I wanted to share a little bit about some of the grant overview with you, and that's our next slide, Victoria. And then Victoria's going to go in more detail about eligibility and that kind of thing. So our Growing Green Community program is designed to fund urban forest projects and to engage new community-based organizations in tree planting activities in one of or multiple areas of Pacific Gas and Electric Company service regions. This year, in 2025, we have $65,000 available for pass-through grants, and we estimate awarding between 13 and 20 projects. And our funding amount is either at a $2,500 or $5,000 grant amount. And this program is a little bit different than some of our larger grant programs where we have multiple years to complete the grant. This is a shorter period. The grant program, if awarded, opens in January, and the project must be completed by May 30th, 2025. And this year, our grant application period will open on November 20th. Our grant application is an online form and will be available on our Growing Green Communities page, which I'll share in just a moment in the chat. And then the application period will close on December 20th at 3 o'clock. So I'm going to turn it over to now to Victoria. She's going to go over some of the details about eligibility and all that good stuff. So Victoria, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Megan. I will catch up better with your slides here going forward. So again, I'm Victoria Vasquez. I'm here to discuss eligibility, the project itself, and see if you have any questions. And if you haven't found your raise your hand button yet, this is a good exercise for you. I'm seeing a lot of seasoned tree planters here on the call. Do we have anyone that's new here today to California ReLeaf or new to tree planting who's never applied for a tree grant before? This would be a good time to raise your hand just so I can tailor our conversation to the needs of this group. Okay, I see a couple hands. Thank you. Thank you, Melissa. All right, great. Then let's do this. I think we might have a lot of former applicants on this call as well to this grant program. So I just want to share with you, there's really not much different. Thank you, Maynard. Nice. Welcome. I'm so glad you're here, Mr. Ramos. This grant is really a smaller grant. It's for smaller community-based organizations, smaller community groups, and people who are interested in adding tree planting to their program or to adding to their tree planting program that you have right now. So I know a lot of you here know that you have to be a 501c3 in order to apply for this grant. And if you are not, you have to have a fiscal sponsor. So we've seen more fiscal sponsors in the last year here at California ReLeaf. We can help you find one if you need help finding one, and help you look to your local community to help you find who's going to help you out. One thing I would like to point out in this picture is partnership. If you see this photo, this is from one of our smaller Growing Green Community grants, and I really love it for several reasons. One is, you can tell this is an urban forestry grant. This is clearly in a city, in an urban environment. This grant is not for rural areas. This is for inner city plantings. These trees are being watered by a watering truck, which is a very interesting idea for some of our smaller groups, and something that some of our larger groups are really succeeding with. And we see partnership here. You can see we have a partnership between a public works department, a street tree planting. We've got great form here with a mulch ring, which is really important, and making sure that we're cutting down those weeds. So I just want to point this picture for those seasoned planters, that this is the kind of picture you can really help to show in your final reporting, that partnership and where you're planting as well. All right, now I'm going to go forward here without skipping to the end. There we go. You have to be within the area to plant. You have to plant inside a PG&E area. You have to do your educational campaign work inside the PG&E area. And there's different ways that you can find out if you are in indeed the PG&E area. So checking the utility bill of the address in which you want to plant is a really great way to do that. You can plant here privately and publicly. So you have to make sure that if you're doing a public event, that it's free and open to the public to join you to plant. We have to make sure that projects on federally recognized tribal lands or publicly owned property applicants upload a permission to plant form. So for those of you who have done this before, this is a new step for you. This is because we have a lot of wonderful project ideas that tend not to make it to the end if they're planting on public property, such as a park or a street right-of-way, and that's because it just takes a long time to get those going. So if you apply with a permission to plant form, which is something that you would provide to a school or a city department, then they can agree at your application stage that you are able to plant in that area, and that way we can make sure that you're being approved for a project that can be completed by the turnaround time because it's a very small window grant. I'm going to take a pause there and ask, does anyone have any questions about that? And Mr. Ramos, I see your hand up from before. Do you also have a question?
And just feel free to unmute yourself if you do still have a question.
Great, and give me a little extra time. I know this meeting's also being transcribed. Mr. Cruz.
Yes, thank you, Victoria. Just a quick question. Would tribal or native organizations be able to apply as long as they're 501(c)(3)? Is that the case?
Yes, correct.
Okay.
Yeah, great question. Okay, great. Well, let's go forward from here. Now, where you plant is important. Making sure that your community has enough trees for lots of different reasons, all those benefits of trees is really the name of the game here. So if your community is a low canopy community, meaning you have fewer shade trees than neighborhoods around you or communities around you, it's going to make you more competitive for this grant. We're looking to plant in lower income or disadvantaged communities, disadvantaged obviously being determined by census tract information. And we want to make sure that communities that have had a historical marginalization of their amenity of trees are being addressed. So making sure that we are finding our communities that need trees the most and planting there is obviously the most important. Now, we're adding this, communities that are affected by extreme weather or climate events. We've had a lot of applicants who have, are trying to rebound from the drought in which we lost so many trees, trying to rebuild after wildfire, trying to, replant trees that they lost during the floods. So if you have had an extreme weather event, this is a really good replanting, replacement tree type grant for you. We highly recommend using tools to find your tree equity score to help you be more competitive. So these are smaller incubator grants. These are practice grants with small dollar amounts so that you can learn how to apply for larger grants and practice for larger applications. And so learning how to use these tools are really important specifically for this group here. And I know a lot of you have tapped into them before, but Megan has put them here very tidily into this screen. She's got them in the resources. She's got them in all of the information that you might need. She's putting links to our resource library here in the chat. So if you want any personalized information as to how to use any of these tools, which tell you which communities have the amount of tree canopy they have, the amount of illness that they might have due to lack of tree canopy, like asthma. There's lots of different things that you can find for your community in these tools to help you build and write a compelling grant to show the need in your community. I'm always happy during the office hours that we'll present to you or at any time to help you learn how to use these tools. I think they're very important. Now, again, make sure that you're in the region when you're applying for your project. We're wanting to make sure that these dollars are spread across the entire region. There's 5 different areas there. If you're new, again, this is for you. That's okay. You don't have to be an expert. You can lean into the network. There's a lot of network members on this call who can help answer to questions. And you can lean on our resource library. We have a guide that will help you A to Z how to plan a tree planting event. And we have a lot of different resources that are previously recorded here in our information and on our YouTube of our website. Now, we are encouraging tree planting. This really is trying to get trees planted in the ground, but there's lots of different ways that you can engage your community when it comes to receiving the benefits of trees, understanding the benefits of trees, and sharing those out. So we want to make sure that your project has lots of partners. Are you engaging your local school, your other smaller CBOs, your places of worship, your after-school programs, your city and county departments? We want to make sure that you are engaging your local partners, inviting them to plant with you so that they can also learn the benefits of trees and sharing the good work that you're doing. We want to make sure that maintenance and watering are taking place beyond the grant period. So this is going to be very important during the application stage for us to understand that you have a plan to take these trees out into the future and that there's someone who's got eyes on them through the rest of their life cycle. We want to make sure that celebrations are included and encouraged when you're applying for some larger grants or sometimes local grants. Planting memorial trees or ceremonial trees are not encouraged. For this type of grant, they absolutely are. Memorial tree and honorarium tree planting is a really good way to engage a specific audience, to revisit that tree every year. If you have a memorial bench put up near a tree that you've planted in someone's name, that can be a really great way for people to engage with the tree, grow with the tree, and feel community in their neighborhood. So absolutely, greening celebrations, including birthday parties for trees you planted last year, maybe with this grant, would be welcomed and encouraged. Now, what can you not do? You cannot plant a tree in a planter. So that's this image here, but I will tell you, we want these trees to go in the ground so that the benefits are received within the soil, within the community, and that we have a long-term solid planting here. So tree giveaways are not encouraged. We want to make sure that we're getting a photo of the trees that you put into the ground. So tree giveaways are not eligible here. Temporary or planter box trees are also not eligible here. You have to be inside the area, and we want to plant a good sized tree. So this is not an acorn grant or a saplings grant. This is definitely a 5 to 15 gallon size tree. We recommend in your public spaces to plant a 15-gallon tree, just a little hardier. And in your residential plantings, 5 gallons would be acceptable. We want to make sure that landscaping projects that increase urban heat island effect are not approved. So not a lot of lava rock. We don't want landscaping rock. We don't want rocks coming up against the trunk of your tree and making it hard for those trees to grow. These are projects where mulch and understory plants are absolutely okay, but not rock or something that's going to further exacerbate extreme heat. And then again, understory plantings are welcomed and wonderful, but should not be the main focus of your grant. Getting those trees in the ground is really the name of the game, and then understory plants can come alongside of that. I think, again, as I'm looking at this crowd, we have a lot of neighbors here who have a really good understanding of their local neighborhoods. But for you to write a grant, if you're new to this, doing a community needs-based assessment is kind of what I'm walking you through here. So looking around your community and asking yourself, what are the needs of my community? Do we have a lot of built environment like cement or asphalt, which can cause extreme heat during the evening hours, as opposed to trees, which can cool the air? We want to make sure that if you have a need for healthy food in your neighborhood, if you have a lack of grocery stores that can encourage access to fresh, healthy food, maybe fruit and nut trees are a good idea for you to plant. And if you do that, we want to help you to understand that the community harvesting fruit is something that you can plan ahead for, making sure that there's enough space in between your fruit trees so that community members can walk around them to harvest that fruit, making sure that it's not locked up in the summer or the winter whenever your trees are bearing fruit, so that community members can access them. That can happen at something like a school where we might lock it up for the summer, or it might be closed for 3 weeks during the winter when something like a persimmon or a pomegranate is fruiting. So we can help you to make sure that your community needs are addressed in an accessible way with the expertise that we have planting with neighbors all across California. If you need air quality enhancement in your neighborhood, if you're planting near a freeway or a highway, we can help you to choose the right species of tree to sequester the most toxins and carbon and pollution as possible. So we extend to you free use of our in-house arborist, Alex Bink. We extend to you, the resource of our library and select tree and a lot of different tools and resources to help you find the best possible tree for your neighborhood's needs. And at the end of the day, community cohesion is really something that all of your planting projects can provide, right? Trees provide a space to convene. Do you have some benches in your neighborhood that don't have shade? Do you have a walkway that doesn't have shade? Do you have a place where the community needs to come together but doesn't because it's uncomfortable? Well, this is a really great way to get something like that done. A small project with high impact for your community. So planning ahead is important. You need to just take a few steps in your planning process to make sure that you're going to get through to the finish line here of this grant. We discussed just now planting for your space, what kind of tree for your location, but also what size is your location. In this photo here, you can see we have a very narrow planting strip along a roadway, right? So making sure you're planting the right size species is important. That's something we're going to be looking for in your applications, and maybe reaching out to you if we have a suggestion as to help you choose the right species. The permission to plant form will help to make sure your timeline is going to be appropriate to the grant. Making sure your community partners know in advance how they can help you. For example, you're going to be shouting your project from the rooftops, right? Hey, community, on our social media or through our local elected officials, we're going to be planting, right? You want the newspaper to know about it. You want all of your local press and media to share out your story. So if you engage with your partners ahead of time and ask, how can you help? Would you like to take photos on the day of? Would you like to share out the information? Would you like to be a named partner? Would you also like to maybe help to fund this event with something like food or t-shirts that are branded? There's a lot of different ways community partners can help. And the idea here is to spread the word that trees are good for your community. So roping in those partners ahead of time is something we recommend. And you'll be asked to do sponsor recognition, right? You're going to say, hey, California ReLeaf was here on your signs. You're going to say, hey, this is brought to you by PG&E on your signage. So understanding your recognition and planning that in advance can be very helpful. And then understanding that in your final report, we're going to be asking you some questions. For example, how many community members did you engage? What was the result of that engagement? Can you please share with us a quote from someone who came to your event? So if you read those final report questions in advance while you're planning it, you can have those built into a checklist on your day of to make your reporting really easy at the end. And of course, sharing your story is really important. So start with those community needs that you have, that needs-based assessment that you create for your neighborhood, and then show the result as to how your story and your planting impacted your community in a positive way. I'm going to hand this back over to Megan here to talk some logistics, and we'll go from there.
Absolutely. We have our application window opening on November 20th, and you'll be able to access the application by visiting our Growing Green Communities information page. I'm going to put that in the chat again, and it's highlighted blue, and it's halfway down that page. The window will open on November 20th in the morning, and it will close. The last day to apply is December 20th at 3 o'clock. We will not be accepting any late applications. So we hope that you put that date on your calendar so you're reminded to apply within the window. We plan to make the announcement on the awardees on January 15th. And we encourage everyone to put a save the date on their calendars. Should you be awarded for January 22nd, we are going to host our orientation webinar to help you get set for a successful project. And it will be really helpful for you to understand the key dates and timelines and the things that will be expected of you and ways that we can assist you throughout the entire project and make sure you are equipped with the resources that you may need, whether it be information of how to plant a tree, where, different supplies that you might need in terms of mulch, that kind of stuff. Our project period, as I mentioned earlier, begins in January and it concludes on May 30th, 2025. So it is a rather short window. So planning ahead and really thinking through your project and choosing, working with partners can be challenging to get everything done in that period. So thinking ahead would be really helpful. And then all final reports for the people who have been awarded the grant will be on June 13th, 2025. On our website under the Growing Green Communities program page, you'll see that there is a link to the final report questions should you want to read those in advance, which I think will be really helpful. And also in the application section of our website, you can see that you can preview the application questions before it opens on November 20th, should you want to begin planning your application questions in advance. And then I'll take the next slide, Victoria. So as far as grant payments go, we provide the first 50% of the grant award upon completing the grant agreement and completing our orientation webinar. We also have a one-on-one meeting with Victoria that will be scheduled, and you can kind of go over your project plan and any resources that you might need. Once all those checks are marked and you've completed those processes, we will mail you a check of that first 50% of your award. The remaining 50% of your grant award will be paid upon completing your project and completing your final report and submitting that via our online form and it being approved by our grant program manager. And then we provide that check to you in the mail. So that covers our grant payments. And we'll go next to some resources. Now, Victoria mentioned just a minute ago that we have a wonderful arborist on staff who can assist you with species selection, which is really helpful. We highly encourage you to sign up for and attend our technical assistance office hours. And I'm going to put that link in the chat right now. And you can ask specific questions. So as you're thinking about this, you're looking at the application questions, you're thinking about your space, what's the right tree for the right place of your location that you're planning on working at. This would be a great opportunity to chat with the entire ReLeaf team to get your answers to your questions that you might have. And all those project planning resources are on the GGC grant page, the Growing Green Communities page. And we can go over some of those resources in a minute, but Victoria mentioned we have information about tree species selection, mapping tools to help you assess the needs for your community. We have community engagement resources, as well as tree planting event resources. So how do you go about doing it? What's the timeline? There's a great resource on our website called the Tree Planting Event Toolkit that I think you'll find really helpful. So I'm going to turn it back over to Victoria, and then I think we're ready for our question and answer period. And it looks like we have some questions in the chat already.
Wonderful. I did see the Greenwell question, which I put an answer to. Somebody asked, what is that green ring that someone was placing around the base of that tree in that photo? and that is a planting aid is what we would call that. If you're planting in an area that has weed whackers or lawnmowers that are hitting the trunks of your tree, that can be a really great aid. If you are planting somewhere that's really dry, where you have volunteers dumping water that tends to run off, that is a really great way to keep that water near the trunk when you're trying to establish it and encourage deep watering. It also can keep your mulch in place. So there's an answer to the question that I saw. Megan, do you see other questions in the chat?
I do. There's a question about, can you explain the utility sponsorship recognition requirement for this grant program?
And, on this slide, we have a really wonderful example of that. So this team put together a vinyl that they sent to a print shop. One of the things we're going to be sharing with you is our logo, PG&E's logo, and then as you can see here, the Urban Forest Friends have their logo on the bottom right-hand side of this vinyl. So this was a really great way that they shared sponsor recognition. One thing that PG&E will do for you if you're awarded this grant, you'll come to an orientation, is you can invite them to come and plant with you. And they have staff that they share planting events with, and quite often they're able to attend if they have enough notice and come and help you plant alongside of you. So that's really great. But just making sure that these sponsors are listed when you're doing things like social media, when you're doing press releases, and when you're doing signage like that. This is a really good practice as well for when you get those larger state grants in which your recognition is required. Does that answer the question? And feel free to unmute yourself.
Yes, that was my question.
Well, thank you. What other questions do we have?
Someone just signed in a little bit late and they asked, will we be sharing the slides of this presentation following today's webinar? And the answer is yes. We'll make the slide deck available as a PDF, as well as share the recording of this webinar on our Growing Green Communities page, as well as emailed to all of those who registered today. And folks, you're welcome to raise your hand in the Zoom toolbar. You can also put your question in the chat and we'd be happy to answer that.
All right, Vincent Valdez, what you got?
Can we use some of the funds from this grant to do outreach in the community? Because when we were canvassing the neighborhoods of South Sacramento, we found the diversity in our community. And to address the needs of that diversity, we needed to, I think, be a little more hands-on with the tree selection and the siting process for those communities. And so we're looking to do a little better this time and possibly use some of the funds from a grant to help us do that.
The answer is yes, and thank you for that question, Mr. Valdez. So let me answer two questions that I heard in there. One is that I hear that you have identified a community need through a needs-based assessment. So great job identifying that you needed a little more one-on-one conversation and outreach with your neighbors to plant on private property is what I'm hearing. That's wonderful. And let me answer the second question, which is, these are 100% unrestricted funds, meaning that I'm not going to ask you for receipts. I'm not going to ask you for 3 bids and which one is the most cost effective. I'm going to ask you to spend these funds in a way that's most appropriate for your project. And that can be really hard to put a rubric to because you're planting statewide. Some of you are planting along the coast. Some of you are planting in the desert. Some of you are planting in a highly forested residential neighborhood where there's forest all around, but not where you're at, right? So you're all going to have different needs for different planting aids. You're, a lot of you are going to speak different languages and need translation in your neighborhoods. Whatever you need is how you can spend these funds. You can spend it on your staff. You can spend it on food. You can spend it on trees. You can spend it on printing. You can spend it on signage. You can spend it on boosting a social media post for your event. There's lots of different ways that you can spend these funds, and we will ask you for a loose description of your budget and how you plan to spend the funds during the application phase and in the one-on-one. One of the reasons that we give you 50% in advance is to do exactly that, to pay your staff to go out and do the door knocking, to understand what needs to be done. We know that small nonprofits don't have a lot of funding up front and that cannot operate on the reimbursement model. And that's why we have specifically chosen to give you half of the funds in advance. If you do not complete your project, the 50% that you spend doing your outreach would be received by you, and the second 50% would not be given out. So just making sure that you are using the funds that you need is what we want to make sure we accomplish together.
Thank you.
Absolutely. I hope that answers your question.
Yes, it did.
Great. We'll give some space for some more questions. Mr. Solomon, what you got?
I've got one. Since there is not going to be any budgeting information on the application itself, if we were to apply for a $5,000 grant and you don't have any information on that, on the details, but you feel that it's a more of a $2,500 grant that would be appropriate, would you automatically offer it as a $2,500 grant?
Oh, that's a good question. I do believe, correct me if I'm wrong, Megan, that you choose whether you're applying for a 5,000 or 2,500 on the application, correct?
Yes, depending on the scope of your project, we're allowing you to choose which dollar amount that you're applying for. So if you're applying for a smaller focused grant and you think $2,500 appropriate, you can select that yourself.
Yeah, and I'll add to that, which is every year that I've done this, we've contacted an applicant and said, you did not apply for enough money. You're going to need a little more money to get this done. So we will absolutely, walk you through which way we think it should go upon reading your application. We'll provide that assistance.
Perfect. Thank you.
Okay, and if you're looking for that raise a hand button, on my screen at the bottom, there is a react heart. And when I click that react heart, then there's a separate little bar that pops up that says raise your hand. So if you've been looking for it, that's where it is. We'll give a little more space to answer questions. Kate Riley.
Can you hear me? Okay, now you can
Yes.
hear me.
Yes.
So I'm, my neighborhood. It's pretty highly canopied. So what I'm interested in looking at is some kind of a, not more tree planting at this point, but more tree stewardship. But is it not realistic to think that because we are not underserved low canopy neighborhood, should we just look for other money? Is that the most realistic thing to do? You can tell me. Just give me the truth.
That's all I ever give, Miss Riley.
I know you do. You certainly do.
Okay, great. That's a really good question. What if I am stewarding trees in a neighborhood that is not underprivileged? Right? Two things I want to point out. One is that we want to reach all of the PG&E area. So if you just happen to be the only applicant in area 3, you're going to become competitive instantly. Okay, so your location is a determining factor because we want to spread this across the PG&E region.
That's interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Good.
Yeah, and number 2, you said a word that is so important there, which is stewardship, right? And so your neighborhood might be well canopied now. And just knowing you personally and knowing the incredible work that you've done for your community over the years, we know that trees have a life cycle. and that each tree that's going in, there's a tree that's coming out. And so making sure that you have achieved that sustainability through a stewardship program is super important, because you might have a lot of trees now. That doesn't mean you're going to have a lot of trees in 15 years if you don't have a community effort to continue to replant those trees. I personally recommended that my coworker go and visit your neighborhood to see lovely fall color. I would hope that I can bring my children back in 20 years and my grandchildren to see that same fall color. So writing your grant with the need to create a sustainable stewardship program is going to be compelling to me. I want to read that. I want to know how you're doing that. So don't be discouraged to apply if you have a lot of trees. Don't be discouraged to apply if you feel that you have funding, because I know that funding that's going into those trees is not necessarily going into the stewardship. Okay?
Thank you. That's great.
Absolutely. Yes. And lowered canopy neighborhoods would take a higher priority, but sometimes there is no one else to prioritize. So just don't ever be discouraged to apply for anything.
That's great. I hadn't thought of that. That's good. Mhm.
Yeah. Mr. Grable.
You know, Victoria, every time you call me Mr. Grable, you make me feel older than I am.
Sorry. David, how can I help you
That's
today?
better. Thank you. I want to ask a question that's related to Kate's question, which is, what are your criteria? What are your priorities? You touched on it, but when you're looking at these applications, what's going to be most compelling for you?
That's a great question. I think I've touched on like the main three, which are number one, you've got to be within the area. We do get applications that are like adjacent or just outside, and unfortunately, those do not qualify. So number one, you got to be within a PG&E area. If you are in the Edison area, there's another grant for you, and you can apply to that one. Number two, the need for the trees in the area that you've applied for. Disadvantaged status is a name that comes from California EnviroScreen. That doesn't mean the neighborhood is disadvantaged. All of our neighborhoods are empowered, wonderful, people-wise, right? But making sure that the need is there, right? And then locality. We are spreading this around the locality and trying to get, we have a focus on some areas that obviously are going to need more trees than the others. But yeah, so I would say your region, your need, and your eligibility. Feasibility comes into play sometimes. I think sometimes we get projects that just aren't feasible from newer groups, and we will reach out and help you to make your project a little more feasible if we feel that it is appropriate. Does that answer your question?
Yes, it does. And thank you, Ms. Vasquez.
See, I find that wildly appropriate. All right. Ms. Walton, may I call you Ms. Walton, or should I call on you in a different way?
I'll take either, Melissa or Miss Walton.
Okay.
So thank you. We are new, and we are a school district working to remove asphalt and add in trees. So we're Alameda, the city of Alameda. So our neighborhoods are not lower canopy, but our schools are straight asphalt. This is a small amount, and we're new to trying to find grants. So we do have schools that are might hit that priority of more disadvantaged, underprivileged schools in our district, but these would need more money to plant because there's no grass, no irrigation. So for us, this would be a pilot project to start getting the community to see what can happen when we can plant trees. And some of those would be at schools that already have some irrigation, already have grass. Is that how we should be prioritizing how we plan it? If our strategy is equity across our schools, but part of that strategy is getting some trees in the ground to show our community what we can do with more grant money? Or should we, try to use this as a piece of funding for one of our more disadvantaged schools?
Yeah, thank you for that. All good questions. And you bring up a lot of really good points. One of them is that you might have a school that has no tree canopy that's in a very well-funded area, right? Which makes a compelling case for equity needs. You know, our children and our students and our young people are shorter in stature and closer to the ground. And when that heat reverberates up off the cement and the asphalt, they experience higher temperatures than we do farther up off the ground. So obviously there is quite a need for extreme heat mitigation within our school districts. I do believe that with a $5,000 cap, you could cut, a couple of squares of cement in a very strategic area, whether it's a corner that shades like a play structure and a parking on the other side, or something of that nature. I don't think you could plant a lot of trees when you're doing tree removal. And pilot is a strong word, but I think maybe just even understanding how much does it literally cost, because it's probably a lot less than people might imagine. So I think that for you, your end game of giving that over to the district, like, look what we did for just $5,000, right? We created, this many square feet of shade. We created, 3 shady parking spots, and we shaded an entire structure in the next 20 years, because it's not going to shade it today, it's not going to shade it tomorrow, but in the next 20 years we're going to see this growth, and we're going to see the temperature be reduced on this playground with this small amount of money. So I do think that's compelling. I would aim small, and for this project in particular, or anyone planting at a school, the permission to plant form is going to be the key to your application there, because if the district has like a 3-month process to sign an approval, then this is not the right grant. But this grant will hopefully come around again next year. And then this is a good way to share this information with your school district, as I know some of you have from last year, to get this going. Does that help? Wonderful, thank you. And Kate Riley, is your hand still up from before, or do you have another question?
That was a mistake. I can't figure out how to put it down. Could someone put
It's
it
okay.
down for me?
Yeah, I think we could do that. Let's
Thank you.
see. There, yeah, absolutely. Well, great. Those are all really great questions. As I said before, you can plant anywhere. There is no restriction, public, private, federal, it's all okay. One thing I want to impress upon you is that, once awarded, there will be an orientation video, just like this one, a webinar together. There's going to be one-on-one technical assistance. During the application period, we will have one-on-one technical assistance as well, that you can ask these questions. It is best to get a hold of me if you have a question via email. We have, again, Alex Bink, who's our in-house arborist, who can help you with species selection, and Megan Duquette here, who can help you with the application logistics if you have questions using the online application form, right? Megan can help you with that. Do we have any more questions before we let you go for today?
Yes, I have one question.
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
I keep hearing cutting concrete. So we can cut in the public right away? How do we get that approved? Are we exempt from permit requirements and underground utilities? How do we go through that?
Yeah, you are not exempt from that.
Okay,
Yeah, so for your public right-of-way project, what you're going to do is reach out to your county
City or
public
county?
works, city public
Okay,
works, yeah, wherever you live, and they can give you the heads up. If they are allowing you to begin a project in the public right of way, then you're going to go through a permitting process. You're going to go through an underground. They'll let you know what's underground,
right,
and that can take quite a long time.
right,
So
okay.
if you do have your eye on a public right of way, I might start that process now. Just
Mhm.
asking, can you plant there? That could take a year, maybe more. I think we
Exactly,
do.
exactly.
Yeah. So just understanding the process is really good to just get started. And then this is something that we could fund once you have the permission to go forward.
Okay. Sounds good.
Yeah, absolutely. And I will say we've seen some really compelling grants come out of the Bay Area that have cut concrete and just ended up beautifully in the last year.
Mhm.
So you can reach out to our network member Climate Action Now if you have questions about public plantings in the Bay Area. They've been very successful.
Okay.
Mr. Solomon?
Yes, thank you. After you've submitted the application, is there a way to unsubmitted to edit it, or is it the strategy to submit it as late as possible if you're not sure about something? Thank you. I'll go on to the answer.
That's a great question. You can submit your application all the way up until the very last moment. There is no extra points for turning it in early. And Megan, I'll kick it over to you to answer the "can you correct it" question, because actually I'm not sure.
Yeah, I'd be happy to answer that question. So our online form does not allow you to save while in progress, nor does it allow you to edit it after you submitted it. However, let's just say you submit it by accident and you're like, oh, I didn't mean to submit it. Please contact us and we can delete your submission, and then you can resubmit the form the way you intended. I would highly recommend everyone work on their questions and their answers to the questions rather, in a word processing document. And so you can refine them before you're ready to insert them into your application form before you submit. That way you're not losing anything as you're typing in the form, because wouldn't that be the worst if you were filling it out and then your internet goes down and then you lost the answer. So we really highly recommend that you work in a word processing form before you get ready to submit. And you can access those questions right now, the preview to the questions on our webpage. And if you have any issues with looking or finding those, please let us know and we can send you a direct link. Thanks, everybody. Oh, and Victoria, it looks like we have one question in the chat that just came up, and it's from, it says, do you have project examples from previous years' grant process? And so I can answer that question. If you go to californiareleaf.org/grants, and I can put that in the chat in just a minute, we do have some grantee highlights that highlight some projects that have happened in the last few years through both our small grant programs, California Arbor Week grant, as well as the Growing Green Communities program. And if you follow us on social media, we usually highlight every Friday a past project, a grantee during the summer after the previous year's grant process has ended. So if you look at our social media from July to just about a week ago, every other week we give you the summary of how our small grantees completed their projects, which is really great and interesting to see what other people have done.
Yes, and almost every single one of these pictures is from one of these projects. So we can show you, specifically like how people are using things like planting aids in this photo, how people are, planting at a school, like in this photo. One thing you'll notice here are those children-sized shovels. Very cool, right? So looking back at other people's projects is a really great way to find great ideas for your project. We can also see here, as I was mentioning before, this cooperation between a public entity and a nonprofit to water those trees once they went in the ground, right? There's a lot of really great information just that you can see through the pictures. So I highly recommend once you meet other network members in your local area, which I kind of skipped this earlier when Megan was talking about it, but this is where our network members are. Finding out how are they finding success in your local area, I think is really important as well.
Yeah, and for those of you that came in a little late, I just put all of the chat links in the chat again, so you can find out information about our grant program, as well as direct links to that technical assistance in the resource library right now. So we'll let you access that. And if you can't find something, please reach out. We'd be happy to help you get the resources that you're looking for.
Hi, I'm sorry to interrupt. It's Kate. Can I ask a real fast follow-up question?
Yes.
Because I'm doing this on my phone because my iPad is down, I can't get to the chat. So is it possible that you could send out the chat links to folks via email who've been on this call?
Absolutely. I would be happy to include all the links in the email to the registrants with a link to the recording as well as the PDF.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
That'd be super. Thank you.
Is there any other questions for us this morning?
Right, Megan, I'll give it over to you.
Well, I want to say thank you to everyone who joined us this morning to learn more about the Growing Green Community grant that's generously sponsored by Pacific Gas and Electric. We're so pleased that you came and you're interested in the program, and we'd be happy to work with you. So please register to attend our upcoming office hours, our technical assistance office hours. Please reach out via email if you have any questions, and we'd be happy to support you. Thank you, and have a wonderful rest of your day, and take good care. Bye, everybody.
Bye.